Most think peace is passive, that war is inevitable, or that somebody else will handle it. Well, we don't. Welcome to the Department of Peace. On today's episode, myself and Jeremy talk through my personal experiences in the Middle East as a producer or a journalist or storyteller, and what this last week being in Iraq has done for someone who grew up in a very privileged American mindset. And a core piece of this episode was us looking back at the stories that we have told thus far and realizing that maybe America really isn't that far removed of actually entering our first dictatorship. And to round out this conversation, we talk about what our hopes are for not only the Middle East, but also for America and realistically everyone in the world. Hope you enjoy this conversation.
All right, well, Joshua White, welcome to the Department of Peace.
So great to be here.
So you've been in Iraq helping record a podcast series called How to Survive a Dictator for the last week or so. So we're doing something different. We're kind of pulling you as producer from behind the cameras and actually putting you in the hot seat. Because I just want to hear your thoughts, some of your synthesis, what has been insightful, shocked you about your time on this trip, what you're hearing from the people you're meeting, what you've learned. Yeah. Tell me what this trip has been like.
So this is actually my first international trip ever. So great first stamp in the passport.
Iraq.
The
place that, yeah. I'll let you say what kind of warnings you got before coming
Sure.
here.
Yeah. Well, okay. So if we want to go back to kind of the origin of the whole thing, when I started telling, friends and family I was coming here, from their perspective, the last thing they know of about Iraq is Saddam, Desert Storm, movies now made around that time period. And so that's essentially the U.S. cultural norm around where we are right now. And so when you tell someone, I'm going there with a camera to record some stuff, it got met with a lot of like, are you sure are you going to be safe? Is this okay? I had one particular friend who was like, man, I just watched Black Hawk Down and I'm really scared for you.
Black Hawk Down is a movie about a mission gone wrong in the 90s, I think.
In Mogadishu.
In Somalia.
So wrong place.
Yeah.
So there was some, obviously from my perspective, I knew, I live in Portland, Oregon. Crime here is lower even, than it is in Portland. And so I was aware of that, but also I knew this is my first, not only big international trip, but my whole perspective of people and what happened in Iraq is also from pop culture and news clips I've seen when I was a kid. And so that's my perspective coming in. What I met, though, in regards of what Iraq actually is, kind of hit me before I even entered the country. So I was getting on the flight here from Qatar, and this guy named Ahmed was right in front of me. And he turns around, he's like, is this your first time in the Middle East? And I was like, yeah, this is my first time ever out of the States. He's like, and you're going to...
You must have really stood out.
Yeah, I just a little bit. Might be the skin tone, I'm not sure. And he goes, and Iraq is your first trip ever. And we were going to Erbil, and that's his hometown. And he turns around and he like gives me a hug. He's like, you're gonna love it. Like, it is such a beautiful place. And then he looks at me in the face. He's like, what do you need? Like, what do you have? Do you have a place to stay? Do you have someone to get you around? And then, of course, like this continually happens to me. He invites me over to his house for dinner. And so I met with this hospitality. He walks me to the visa station in the airport. I go inside to get my visa receipt so I can enter the country. And there's like 2 or 3 other people outside. who clap for me when I come out with the receipt. So like I'm already having this like
Not mockingly.
no, like actually
sincerely.
like yeah, absolutely. And so you have that, and that happened time and time again. As you know, I met these like Lebanese guys who invited me to this rave at the hotel, and it just kept happening over and over again. And this might be going a little deeper than maybe intended at the very beginning, but I met with all of this hospitality from people who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, which means they've lived through the Saddam years. They have probably seen like dead bodies on the ground before. It's not too far-fetched to say that. And then they've probably had someone that they've known who was killed most likely by someone who looks a lot like me too. And that really struck me. So like the amount of hope and optimism that is everywhere, even in the face of someone who might look like the person who hurt you, that was really fascinating to me. On the flip side, I think it also showed me how disconnected America is to one another and to hope. There's one specific day about 3 months ago, I was driving to work. There's a massive fentanyl crisis in Portland. And I saw a man laying on the sidewalk, which wouldn't really be unfortunately out of the norm, but I don't think he was breathing. And I was walking to my studio, and I think his partner was like trying to revive him. And I'm watching this happen, and I call 911, and I see several people like me just walk by him on their phones as if that's just a common practice that they see every day, a dead body on the ground. This is like Thursday morning, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. So people are going to their jobs and their work. And I don't know why exactly, but those two narratives have stuck out to me this entire week. People here who have probably seen family members hurt, displaced, killed by either Saddam or someone who looks like me. And then my hometown who sees a dead body and completely ignores it because we're so disconnected to maybe what it means to love your neighbor and your stranger. And I've been really wrestling with both of those things today. Not even today, but this entire week, the entire time I've been here. Yeah.
You come to the Middle East and to Iraq and to a region in Iraq at a particular time. We are not in the absolute throes of war in Iraq right now. The region, much more broadly, is simmering. There's a lot of stuff that's still going on. Our very team is going through in Gaza, Lebanon, Syria. So, and that affects us here, but Iraq itself is not. It's not those caricatures right now that people have seen on the media, and so we've had some time here to recover from some of that. I'm synthesizing and processing what you're saying right now as well, and kind of taking myself back a number of years. If you had arrived here at another time, what would have been true of your experience?
Yeah.
The hospitality would have been true. You would have experienced most of those same kinds of kindness. The capacity or the soul deadening kind of experience of seeing people suffer, on the other hand, you probably would have encountered something here that was maybe similar to what you're seeing at home in Portland right now. That is I guess our survival, our series that we're doing right now is called How to Survive a Dictator. And I think one of the insights you're helping me tap into right now is that, weirdly, part of how people survive, I don't know if this is the best survival thing, but one of the coping mechanisms is deadening, numbing yourself to certain things around you.
Disconnect.
It's a survival
Yeah.
or a coping kind of response.
Yeah.
I don't have a point to that. It's just I'm thinking back that I've certainly been in those situations here where we all walked by dead bodies on the street, and I'm not suggesting it was everywhere all the time, all at once, but it's happened, and you can't. People can't let everything in all the time,
Right.
And so then it becomes. I guess the challenge then becomes, what filter do you use? Who do you let in? Whose pain do you let in? Whose pain matters?
Yeah.
Who can puncture that veil that defense, that armor that we build up? Let me ask this. You've met in Iraq various kinds of Iraqis. You've met Kurds, you've met Arabs, you've met Sunni people, Sunni Muslims, Shia Muslims. You've even met Lebanese people from outside the country. You met Syrians. So you've gotten a decent taste in a few days of kind of the diversity of thought and experience. But also, I suspect that one of the things you've pieced together is a kind of, there's a sameness across all of this as well. What's some of the diversity and what's some of the sameness that you've witnessed firsthand over this trip?
Yeah, well, I think that's another piece of, I think, just culturally that is so new. It's so inviting. It's something I've wanted to see for so long. I think all of us want to see in America for so long. You have multiple people here because of multiple reasons, and actually way different reasons than you probably would have in America. A lot of people come here out of displacement, or they have been displaced before and they've been here, or they've left here, like Rawan was here, had to leave, came back. And so I think there's a sense of like commonality, and maybe I'm completely wrong here, but I feel like maybe a common undertone in everyone here is like, you don't know what this other person or their family or the previous generation has had to go through. The city that we're in as well is what feels like to me, I wouldn't say rebuilding, but is kind of going into its next version, its next iteration, or it's like next 2.0. There's a lot of construction here happening. And this is a construction from like the Saddam years, but this is like evolvement, us culturally moving forward. So I feel like the diversity of culture is fascinating, but it's under one umbrella. Like all of the diversity has one common theme of like, how do we all befriend one another, like befriend our neighbor, and just like start working from here and like building back up.
How do you process, maybe from where you sit today, just a week on, the early warnings, the maybe naive, certainly well-intentioned warnings of many of your friends and family, based on your experience and based on their experience? Like, they didn't come to those conclusions or those fears out of nowhere.
Right.
How's that hitting you, and what are you taking back with you, having spent so much time now sitting and listening to people who have actually lived the very stories that your friends were warning you about?
Yeah. Well, if there's anything to fear here, so far it's either getting COVID or my flight actually landing, so things from the actual city, there was one particular, I've now been outside around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning twice, and it is the quietest and most peaceful hours. The only people out are people who are showing up at their restaurants or their shops and getting stuff ready to go. And so the fears that people have given me coming here are completely non-existent. They're just not there. It just makes for a good story, makes for a good movie. So that's why you still have those movies that are made and why those fears are there. But then hearing the stories of people, one of them that just like strikes me is our guest from yesterday who was a freedom fighter, and just the diversity of that story versus the other ones of him choosing to be on the front lines. But then, again, I don't know if you saw this too, but his behavior or his just like life energy did not give off like that type of lifestyle. Like, again, I feel like there's way more, there's like joy in everyone. There's like optimism in everyone. Yet, and maybe this is just my basic American, thinking, I do feel like in a lot of the stories that we've shared this week, there's a grieving process in everyone that I don't think will actually ever be fully grieved. I think there's grief of what has happened and what life could have been if that didn't happen. But there still is peace and hope and joy and optimism of what we can build from that. And I swear, I feel like every single person, especially part of this organization, but a lot of people in the city live and breathe from that life ethos
of hope. Is that what you? Is that
that's built
a word or
hope? I think the word is hope, but it's also mixed with we're not too far removed of what has happened to us.
That's a good point. I think that's right. There are communities, there are demographics in America who also do not feel far removed from pain, suffering, like real lived experience of verifiable pain and suffering.
Yeah.
On our soil.
Yeah.
Not just those who, maybe went abroad and fought in World War II or Vietnam, but on our soil.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are those communities inside of the American borders on that soil that actually don't have any real lived memories of active oppression, suffering, pain, tyranny, certainly not genocide,
right?
Internment, torture. And America's such a big place geographically, and such a big place population-wise, so much bigger than Iraq or Syria or Lebanon or Gaza, places where we've been thinking and talking about so much this week. I wonder how that affects, I think it's fairly clear how that affects the American concept of democracy, of civil engagement, of civic life, of what it means to be a society together, when some of us can so easily recall the pain and suffering, such as you're referencing here,
right?
Recent memories of that keep you kind of anchored and on alert, versus hope.
Yeah.
And what hope sounds like when it's not anchored in pain, versus what hope sounds like when it is anchored in memory.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts or reflections on that?
Yeah. As an American, I think one of the things that I've also seen this week that I hope to bring back home is everyone here is also aware. And I mean that like in the literal sense, like aware of what's happening around them. But they're also aware of what's happening like in maybe they're in the political world, and they're aware of what is being done, and they're not just listening to whatever is given to them. One of our guests, Rwand, he said something. So you asked him, what does it mean to survive a dictator? And he said, well, actually, before you survive it, you need to know what to be on the lookout for. And he listed off these like 5 things, which if you want to know those 5 things, go listen to that episode. But the 5 things he listed,
I felt like he was reading our mail.
It almost sounded scripted, like as if we gave it to him to say that. Like, I don't know if I was sitting over here.
I don't know if you could see me, but like my mind was just
your
like,
mind was you were laughing.
I was like, you're literally talking about America right now. And he wasn't.
No, he was not. In fact, we learned after that he was trying to be coded.
Yep.
Because he didn't feel like he was just critiquing the past.
Right.
He was actually critiquing a version of his own present.
Right.
As well.
Yes. He was also referencing what Saddam did. I mean, one of the things he talked about in that too was how Saddam took away all media sources, except for I think it was like one channel or something like that. And sure, like we still have. Oh, and one of the other things he did too was limited how much outside press, like who got to come to interview him, and so it's like those little things that were just, I guess, fascinating to me, jaw dropping to me, but also it threw that little piece inside of me where I was like, I don't know if I can trust. This might sound a little too conspiracy theorist for anyone, but I don't know if I can trust one particular news source ever again after being here. It's almost like it must be community based. Like I almost want to listen to my neighbors first and figure out what does my street need before I figure out what my neighborhood needs, before I figure out what my city needs, and so on and so forth.
Well, that's interesting. I have no idea what I'm about to say is going to go, but that's interesting because that is very, very similar to what our American Vice President J.D. Vance recently said, which has come under a lot of critique. And he said it in justification of the American cutting of foreign aid.
Yeah.
And he essentially said, we need to take care of ourselves, like our family. Like he basically, as a good Catholic, he invoked this Catholic idea that you take care of your family, then you take care of your neighbor, then you take care of, your neighborhood or your city or your state or your country, kind of outward expanding circles. And that came under a lot of critique, actually, from the Catholic community worldwide. And I think might have even gotten a direct rebuke from the Pope that said, that is not what this order is meant to communicate. Like, these need not be kind of linear. Where you cannot, it's not a video game where you can't advance to the next level until you fully fulfilled the level before it. These are actually meant to be concentric and simultaneous. So I might offer as a slight refinement on your idea that yes to the neighbor, yes to community-based information, but maybe in the spirit of Jesus, who's our neighbor? And if you actually were to take that story, that scripture, kind of at face value, it's like the answer seems to be anyone, everyone, everywhere.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you get your information from the streets, right? But then
I think that's the issue, from the streets.
Yeah.
Wherever the streets are. Not from the corporate overlords, the oligarchs, the billionaires who now control so much of our media.
Yeah, you help the widow on the sidewalk outside of your house first, but that also doesn't mean you stop there, right? This is where I get into and have had a lot of interesting, DMs or conversations about why I'm coming here and who am I doing some work for and what about foreign aid. And the common general consensus from Americans is we have to take care of ourselves before we take care of other people. Sure. Yes, I get that. But also a part of the American dream that we receive is we are immensely blessed with an insane amount of resources. And for us to just hoard those on our own and not steward those well, that's where I see, like, if you're going to take care of your neighbor, you probably have more than just to take care of him, And so when I see people here, I think there's a lot of people that I've seen, and there are a lot of people in Portland too, in the U.S., who are the least of these or the ones who need a lot of help because they don't have any. one of our guests said this beautiful thing that like I probably going to get it tattooed on me somewhere somehow. But like she said, being a refugee does not mean we always need help. As a matter of fact, I would probably argue, and this is a question I'll throw at you eventually in this episode, I bet refugees are some of the biggest helpers in the world. And I have no reason to believe that outside of the fact that they have been helped so much.
Wow.
And the way that
You have no reason to believe that from the chair that you were just occupying 2 weeks ago watching American media portray refugees.
Absolutely.
You have no reason to believe that they are the most helpful.
I think they are.
Fascinating.
I have the strong assumption of two things I think might be true. One, they are not only the bravest, but maybe the most, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I want to say hardened, but like they can go through some stuff. The grittiest. They are the grittiest like community I've seen, but then also maybe some of the biggest helpers as well. And so, yes to foreign aid helping other people. Yes to every American helping more than their neighbor. But then also like changing our perceptions of like what the American media says about refugees.
So one of the things our family has been having this debate for the last month as foreign aid spigot gets cut off around the world. Do we love the fact that Trump has just pulled the mask off on the whole thing? Or is the mask actually somehow better for the world? Okay, here's what I mean by that. I am broadly of the opinion that foreign aid has, and you even see the system itself making this argument right now, trying its best to claw back its resources, that American aid is in America's best interest because it buys us influence. It allows us to, essentially, not too many people are saying this on the nose, but control other countries and their governments. Right. It gives us a carrot and a bit of a anti-carrot or a stick, if you will, without even having to invoke military. Yeah. You can just stop feeding people, and that's a stick. Yeah. And for generations, that has been cloaked, marketed, spun as American altruism. All the while, we topple regimes, we install dictators, we support them behind the scenes, we let them brutally massacre people, we ourselves commit and fund genocide. Yeah. So we kill with one hand and feed and sustain with the other, often in places that might just do better off if we just stayed the hell away altogether. Yeah. And so arguably what Trump has done or is trying to do, whatever his motives may be, is pulled the mask off the whole thing. Right. And said, well, why are we feeding these people here? Why are we doing that there? We should just put America first. Mm-hmm. And the old way is fighting back and saying, no, this is putting America first. It's like finally trying to like say that part out loud. Mm-hmm. It is putting America first when we use our large S to keep our hands in the pot all around the world. Mm-hmm. What do you think? Is it better to have the mask on or the mask off? So from a foreign policy and what we the people might do to hold our leaders accountable and all that kind of stuff.
So let's say someone gives you a house. It's a strong house. A lot of people see this house. They want the house. It's got good bones, but there are a lot of issues on the exterior, on the interior. Probably need some work on the foundation. You're also in a good amount of debt. You don't want to go into more debt. So would a good leader burn the whole entire house down and say, I'm just going to build this from scratch? Or would you look at things in the house that need fixed while maintaining and sustaining the things that keep the house built? I think a good leader wouldn't completely burn the thing down unless the actual foundation was 100% absolutely, rotten.
Let's set aside, if we can, just for the sake of the argument.
Sure, yeah.
Let's set aside like how he did it, how
Yeah.
he went about it, the kind of kamikaze overnight
Yeah, all the
that left
egos and
that left so many people out in the cold and hungry. And
Yeah.
let's just leave that aside, because I think almost everyone that I've talked to can
Yeah.
agree that that was wild.
Yeah.
I more want to focus at the America level than the like Trump or any other leader
Sure.
level. I'm curious what you think as to whether it's better for America to be seen as this, exceedingly generous democracy and still trying to get away with as much in the shadows as possible, and using aid as leverage to manipulate people, or if it's better to just, and I don't know if this is even exactly what's happening, but to shine the light on the whole thing,
Sure. Yeah.
try to dispel as many shadows as possible and say, I don't think I want to even be in that game anymore, whatever the motives are.
Yeah.
Is it better for people to see America as the good guy and then we get away with doing a lot of bad stuff? Or is it better over time if people just lose that veneer?
Yeah. That's a good question. It's hard because, I think anyone would say there should be a third option in that. How do we be the good guys?
How do we actually be good?
Yeah. There's a question right there.
That's an option.
How to be good. That's our next series. How to be the good guy. How to stop the dictator, and then how to be the good guy. I think the veil was getting ripped anyways. I think it was a matter of time. When you have social media the way that it's built now, it's a matter of time. And social media eventually creeped its way into government and politics. I think the first Trump campaign, the Hillary and Trump run, that was maybe even before that, Obama was probably the first president to really leverage not only social media, but going on talk shows and like having like a consistent run on talk shows for his campaign. So it was just a matter of time how thick social media and information bias could come into the White House. So I think it was a matter of time. Trump is also, he's a reality star, right? So the idea of let's just rip the whole thing apart, there's drama involved in that. And so when you have someone who, for the most part, his on-camera life was built out of drama, then it makes sense for us to go this way. I think one of the interesting clips I've seen recently was Dr. Fauci talking about how, like, at one of his hearings, it was the first time Fauci kind of like Trump said something. He basically just called Trump a fool, and he gets called into Trump's office almost like right after and thinking, this is it, I'm going to get fired. And Trump is looking at all the TVs and he's like, do you see all the ratings right now? They're going through the roof with this clip that you just said about me. And that was the response from Trump, was look at all the attention we're getting right now. So like, being a reality star, I think it makes sense for him to make some of these really extreme decisions right now. When you live and breathe off of drama, and that's what gets you the clicks, the money, the power, the fame, makes sense for you to continue that wheel as much as possible.
All right, let's go back to your experience of kind of a post-American Iraq. What's the most shocking thing you heard from a guest this week?
There's a surface level shock of our freedom fighter brother who's here. Some really hard things that he saw. It's different when you're, in the room with them and they're sharing that versus hearing it on a screen and listening to it in your ears. There's that. The biggest shock was, I think, some of the stories that were being told about what was going on right before the war started, right before the dictator took place in power. And I feel like I'm seeing all those things happen currently in real time in our country where we come from. I think that was the most shocking thing. And one thing I just can't get out of my head that we've already referenced was Rwand's 5 things, what to look out for with a dictator. And that was the biggest shock piece for me this week, because all 5 are at play right now. Yeah.
It's interesting to sit with people on the far side of it all, as we mostly did this week. And their accumulated wisdom. One of the premise for this series is, for me, I've spent 20 years in this region doing this work, and so for me, one of the main premise was kind of like, the U.S. has long been accused of stoking the fires of conflict around the world. We supported Saddam throughout the 80s, and then only kind of turned on him when he became inconvenient to us by invading Kuwait. But if he hadn't invaded Kuwait, we would have stuck with him for a while. He'd committed genocide when he was our partner, and did not become the butcher of Baghdad on that day.
Right.
He only became the butcher of Baghdad later, years later,
Right.
when we didn't need him anymore.
Right.
And so the U.S. has a history of stoking these fires, supporting, the very bad guy that we end up discarding and vilifying later. And then we come to, maybe at best as Americans, think of these people here in these streets and these homes and these offices as victims. We think of them, maybe if we're really empathic and loving people, we might think of them as our victims, and maybe our heart reaches out and we want to help them. The premise for me in a lot of this was that these friends are our experts that we've made around the world.
Yeah.
We've actually made professors of peace around the world. We've made experts on coups and dying democracies. And, some of the best of us have looked at them as victims to help and serve over the last 20, 30 years, whatever. But I wanted to turn the tables a little bit and position them in the expert's chair.
Yeah.
And say, teach us. You've acquired a certain set of skills, a certain view of the world that we don't have, and we might actually end up needing here pretty soon.
Yeah.
So without going through the whole, we're so sorry for what we did to you, so let's just skip over that. You're the expert. We're here to listen and learn. Teach us. What do we need to know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it right on the head. It's funny how everything goes in a circle. I think, like you just said, the very people who went through this 20 years ago might be the very people who are helping, potentially, America the next round, if something like that were to happen. I want to go back maybe to one of the other questions, though. I would love to get your perspective on some of the questions you asked me, because you've been here for over 20 years. And so you have seen this, not only this city, but many parts of the Middle East evolve over time. You've also seen whole places that you've lived completely decimated. So I would love to maybe get your perspective from an American who is a dual citizen here and speaks this language, is part of the community, part of the culture. What is the energy that you're feeling in modern day Iraq 2025?
kind of have two hats. I've got the hat I wear, or the things I feel that are kind of locally rooted here, where we sit today in the Middle East, in Iraq, in a predominantly Kurdish city in Iraq. And the things I feel for my network across and team, colleagues across the region, those things are different from the things I often feel or feel maybe differently connected to when I'm in America, or when I'm thinking about America, or have that American hat on. So they don't necessarily run parallel. For the Middle East, it's such a mixed bag. I mean, is there progress here? Would things have been better if Saddam Hussein just stayed in power? I mean, I don't know. It's so hard to play the road not taken. There's progress here, you know? I mean, this is not the same country it was under Saddam. It's not the same country it was in 2003 when the troops pulled out, when ISIS took over. You know, Iraqis, Kurds, Arabs, Christians, Muslims, Jews, Yazidis, on their own and with the help of Americans and other outsiders, have forged a country for themselves that is genuinely post-dictatorship. There's tons of valid critiques about the governments that are here now, but they are not Saddam governments. You know, they often get accused of being little Saddams, and you know, there's millions and millions of people across this country who assert that that's true. And I think if millions of people are calling you a little Saddam, you should take notice and maybe be humble and fix some things. But they call them little Saddams, not full Saddams, you know, because people do have recent enough memory here that we don't just throw around words like dictator too casually. Because it's not an idea here. It's not a concept. It's a memory. It's not a cuss word. It's not it's not something you throw on someone to hurt someone.
It's a lived experience.
It's a memory.
And
there's a lot of those memories. And I think they pull on us and push on us in different ways. The post-Saddam world has been at times very, very sectarian, in a way that arguably some would say Saddam kept a lid on. But he also stoked the fires while keeping a lid on it. So you have something that's getting hotter and hotter and hotter under greater and greater pressure. And then when the lid comes off, now the whole thing explodes. Well, whose fault was that? Was that the lid? Was that the fire? Was that the contents inside? A lot of times we end up blaming the contents inside. Like, well, these people, they can't live together. They're always fighting each other. This is just how they are. But we sometimes ignore the fact that there's someone artificially keeping a lid on top while stoking the fire beneath it. And I think that person probably should get more blame than just the contents inside that are getting agitated.
what did Saddam do that was good for this country?
He was a really good builder, an industrialist kind of type. Now, a lot of what he built were monuments to himself and monuments to the country, but he also built roads and museums and systems and literacy in the 80s. He won an award from the UN for bringing literacy up to tremendously high levels. Education system, healthcare. In the 70s, before he was, fully in the president's seat, but was over a lot of industrialization in a sub position that is often credited to him for leading a lot of growth. Healthcare in the 70s here was tremendous. So he was a good systems guy. He was a good vision guy. He got his people to operationalize a lot of things. And, Iraq did not miss out on the broad growth of that period. But then he completely overplayed his hand,
Right.
and
Yeah.
his eyes got bigger than his stomach in many ways, and launched a foolish land grab against Iran, and dragged the country into an 8-year war with Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Then ended up committing genocide against the Kurds in their struggle for freedom, and nearly bankrupted the country. And the bankruptcy, the complete poverty that he put the country in, that's what drove him to invade Kuwait and try and annex Kuwait as a way of getting oil wealth and oil revenues back to save all the trash that he'd done for the 10 years prior. So, yeah, did he do some good? Sure. Could any number of other guys come in and women led similar growth? Yeah, they without the genocide and without needing to pit people against each other. Yeah, I don't think there's anything inherent about Kurds and Arabs that need to fight each other. There's nothing inherent about Sunni and Shia Muslims that need to fight each other, or that Muslims and Jews or Muslims and Christians here that needed to fight. Everyone will say that their parents or grandparents have memories of everyone living in mostly harmony. And Saddam, the era of Saddam, then Americans, then ISIS, like just was decades of just strung together strife.
So we're in this series, How to Survive a Dictator. The reason why I asked that question is to get to this question: can a dictator start out being good? And if they do, what are the signs that you should be looking for them to go away from being a good leader and moving towards becoming a dictator? Because at that point, too, you trust them. And trust for any leader, if you voted for them and they're doing what they said they did, they're like doing exactly what you would consider justice or equality or goodness for everyone in your country, and then they start making these weird moves, I feel like they'd be harder to see because you have your trust there.
I think that's exactly right. I can't speak for all dictators around the world. I'm not a student of all of them, but I would guess that most start out good in the eyes of most people.
Yeah.
Every leader anywhere, organizational, certainly national, is going to have their detractors. Like maybe that's one of the signs when you start seeing 90% election rates, something's amiss. But, I mean, a 50-50, a 60-40 kind of support for a leader means that you've got that many people on the other side who still are suspicious of you or don't like your party or don't like your ideas or whatever. But yeah, I think most probably start out good or at least not evil. There's that whole notion of like, we say this in America sometimes, like anyone who wants to be president is fundamentally not qualified to do it, So there's that dynamic of like maybe everyone who wants to lead at that level should be suspect, because it does fundamentally take a kind of ego, megalomaniacal kind of personality that even the best of us would be hard pressed to survive under that kind of pressure.
Like the amount of ego you have to think I can lead the free world is kind of wild, right?
Or even a nation.
Or even a nation.
Any nation, certainly a diverse nation. I do think that most start out not evil. Yeah. That's different than being good, but I'll at least say not evil.
No, it's good. That's good.
I think systems, I probably try to keep an eye more on systems than personalities.
How so?
I think systems tend to be more corruptive or corrosive. And then personality or persona is like a secondary kind of thing. When you imbue someone with significant power, when the system imbues them with power and there's no checks and balances, then that person is going to succumb to the system. Certainly there are people of greater and lesser character who might resist longer, succumb faster, whatever it is. But I think it's part of why Americans have been programmed to believe that we are immune to dictatorship, because we've been told that we have a system that fundamentally could never succumb.
Yeah.
So then when you start seeing maybe once good systems, or passable systems at least, come under attack, then I start getting worried. Especially when it seems like there's a collaboration to attack the system. Like in my experience and my cursory knowledge of what I know of, this region and maybe some other dictatorships around the world, it's not really as simple as the king makes a dictate and there's no option. It's more like the president makes a statement and it garners some support, and people give away a little bit of their freedom. The Congress, the Parliament, the judiciary, the press, they acquiesce. And then it's red light, green light, And if you get a green light, then you see we're all 3-year-olds at the end of the day. We all want to know what we can get away with. And so when the judiciary acquiesces, or the media gives a pass, or Congress are bought and paid for, or whatever, then the president's going to make another move, or a really powerful senator is going to make another move, or the judiciary is going to let a newspaper or a TV channel be bought by a billionaire who's in the pocket or in cahoots with the president. So I think the systems start coming under threat, or making concessions, until one day the president finds that he's got considerable powers and considerable influence across all the checks and balances that maybe once used to exist. Now it's probably getting close to too late. And so you often don't know you have a dictator on your hands, or a coup that's been quietly happening until
it's arrived. That's fascinating. So once you're in one, what do you do?
Well, I'm not the expert, and this is why I'm trying to meet with my friends and neighbors around the world that my country has helped to train in dictatorship expertise, in war expertise, in refugee expertise. I'm genuinely here to listen and learn, because I wouldn't pretend to really know. Okay, let me say this. I actually do think I know how to survive a dictator. That's different than how to stop a dictator, stave off a dictator, overthrow a dictator. The words we've been using, the questions I've been asking our friends are how to survive. I think a lot of Americans, maybe some Europeans, some others around the world right now are getting a little antsy and anxious. If you come from a certain political background, maybe more than the other, what you're really asking is how to stop a dictator, or dictatorship, or a coup, and I mean, by definition, none of my friends, none of our guests here succeeded in doing that. They actually don't have any expertise on that either, because we all failed. Could it have been stopped? I don't know. But no one that we're going to be sitting with probably could make any definitive claims about how to stop it. We're all just looking back and we're going, well, here's the symptoms that we now know from our vantage point today. And I think the net wisdom of it all is, I think what we hear everyone saying is, be vigilant. Don't let this stuff happen. Don't let your judiciary get chipped away. Don't let your media get bought. Don't stop speaking out. Don't stop maybe this is the one that I am hearing or feeling at least the most. Don't stop organizing, and that can mean different things to different people. Like if you come from a very political action oriented background, then it means one thing. What I feel maybe most innately over my 20 years of doing this is just don't let it rip you apart. Just don't. And that's not a strategy. That's not a list of tactics. It's just like an assertion I feel like I want to make after living it. And just don't get ripped apart. Like we need each other, even when we profoundly disagree with each other.
Yeah.
And when we let ourselves get ripped apart so easily, then we find ourselves sitting across from the very people that we need to be marching in the same direction with.
Yeah. That's good. You know a little bit about my story, and this is in a lot of ways my origin story, my genesis story into humanitarian work, which I hope to be for the rest of my life in some capacity. What would you say for other Americans who are trying to get involved in humanitarian work or just becoming aware of like what is actually happening in the world and around them? And maybe they have a gift, a resource, finances, a skill they want to offer. Where do we start? Where do we begin that process, that journey?
For a lot of us Americans, I've noticed this over 20 years of leading this kind of work in organizations like this. There's sort of two camps. There may be more, but two camps might broadly be defined as what's often been called the white savior, the one who wants to go abroad and change the world. Yeah. That was certainly me 20 years ago. I came through that school of thought. I came through that orientation. And, you'll hear in these episodes, in these podcasts, friends who have known me for a good portion of that time who are grateful that we did. That model, that way of thinking, that colonialist white guy missionary mindset has certainly come under fire and is not in vogue and not something I want to promote anymore. But I'm grateful to that guy. Like this guy was somehow carried inside that guy, and that guy brought me here. So I like to try and corral the energy of any wild Mustang who just wants to like launch out into the world. Like, I love Mustangs. I love just like run free people who have all this energy inside and want to do something with it. The activist, the missionary, the Peace Corps member, the would-be humanitarian frontliner, the documentary filmmaker, like all those people who just feel like they have to be in the mix. Yeah. There are more and less healthy ways to do that. I think I've lived the unhealthy, I've learned the more healthy. And I think there's a place for us in this big wide world as Americans to come alongside and serve. But the orientation should be different than it was over the last decades. Like, we're not the experts in this world that is emerging. We are the democracy project that many of us were taught that we were all on, is having its mask ripped off, as we've discussed. And so we can't be the preachers and proclaimers and prophets of peace in some ways, because we are actually the merchants of war in many ways. And the world knows that now. Maybe always did, but it certainly knows it now. So our role is to come with a different kind of humility than maybe we did in the past. So that's one thing. I'll just say that, like, I don't want to squelch that energy, and some people do, and I understand that desire too. I'm not one of them. I want to blow on the embers of that flame and try and guide it toward what I now think are more healthy expressions. The other group is the, like, we've got too many problems at home kind of group. And that's a diverse group, honestly. A lot of people, I think, might conjure a Trump supporter, America first, MAGA mindset. And and those are my neighbors back home, and that's real. That exists. They have real concerns with America and where it's going, and why are we spending so much money abroad when we genuinely have problems at home? There's also a very diverse community that doesn't fit that demographic, that's been saying for a really long time, we have a lot of problems at home. Like, they're maybe not necessarily railing out against foreign aid or don't care one way or the other if we're supporting, other places, but there's certainly a lot of black leaders and brown leaders across the ages who have been saying, we have problems at home. Hello. Why aren't we addressing this here? If we have money to fund genocide in Gaza, how much could that do to serve our own communities here? So for that whole group of whichever persuasion, maybe a more liberal or a more conservative, we have enough problems at home. I would just want to say, yeah, you're right. And there's a lot we can learn still in global community with people who have also had their share of problems at home. Whatever the origins of those problems, whether it was because we waged war on them or whatever, they still experience it as a local problem. And so we have a lot to learn from each other, whichever one of those kind of groups you come from. And so with that being my background and kind of my thinking and orientation to this, that's actually one of the reasons why we built the Department of Peace as an online community where we're trying to connect these groups together, these groups that have, maybe been cordoned off from each other or think your political persuasion might not allow you to be in relationship or community with someone else from a fundamentally different. We actually have a lot more in common, probably a lot more concerns that overlap than we've been allowed to think. And we get hung up in this right versus left programming that makes us think that we're like conservatives versus liberals versus leftists, whatever. And I actually think that the way we need to reorganize ourselves is top versus bottom. Like, it is really, really, truly the oligarchs and the plutocrats against the rest of us. And we are together, the people. We, the people, are trying to form still a more perfect union. And I think my definition of we has expanded globally over these decades. And that's why we built the Department of Peace, is so a place where people can come together and try to, with some level of like psychological safety, feel like they can explore these things with a community that's not, everyone is so judgmental out there on social media. We're trying to be like an anti-social media, behind closed doors, behind a lock. You have to get in. And once you come in, like, we're a loving group of people who are trying to help each other figure this out. Not judge you because of what hat you're wearing or where you come from or whatever, but experts trying to help experts, everyday people trying to help everyday people. We're also trying to figure this out, and that's why we're building this like online community of dreamers and doers.
This might be a good question to wrap this up then. What is your hope, not only for America, but what is your hope for the Middle East?
My hope for both of them is absolutely the same. I want Iraq, Syria, Palestine, America to become countries where everyone rises. Everyone. I don't want the destruction of Bashar al-Assad. I didn't want the destruction of Osama bin Laden. I don't want the destruction of Trump or Biden or Elon or my neighbor or my enemy. I want us all to rise. I want us to rise economically. For those who already have, number one money in the world, there's other ways to rise. There's a spiritual rising that still needs to take place in the richest among us. They are impoverished. And I want them to rise. I don't want them to rot. For those of us who are spiritually rich, but living in destitution, I want economic rising. For those of us who lack rights, I want us to rise in freedom. For those of us who have less opportunity, I want us to rise in opportunity. For those of us who have more opportunity, I want us to rise in the experience of what it looks like to leverage that opportunity on behalf of others. There's so much rising that no one needs to think we've already arrived, but we don't need to get greedy for the things that we already have either. Like the rising isn't about the accumulation. It's often about the giving away. Yeah. And that's right. And I'm fascinated. I'm just completely captured by the question of what does it mean for everyone to rise? What does it mean for you to rise? Because if I put that hat on, if I put those lenses on, and I start asking of, my worst enemy, the person who hurt me the most, the person who changed my life forever, whatever it is, I start asking, what would it look like for him to rise? What would it look like for them to rise? And then to genuinely want that for them. It melts hatred. It melts a desire for revenge or retribution. Yeah. And it starts to put me in a posture where my fists come down and my hands open up, and whether they ever rise or not, I don't know. But I rise in wanting them to rise.
I don't know if there's a better way to end a podcast than with that. I think that's solid.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
More to come.
More to come.
We are the Department of Peace. If today's conversation challenged you or changed you or made you think, don't let it stop here. If you're sick of the way things are, but you don't want to just sit in your frustration, I hope you'll become a member of the Department of Peace today. The Department of Peace online community is a space where doers and dreamers across the world are coming together to rise above the mindsets and the systems that keep us down and divided. And this isn't just talk. We're actually doing it. We fund relief work in Gaza. We're rebuilding in Iraq and Syria. And we're producing and touring protest art from Ukraine and the West Bank. When you join us, you'll be joining a community of people ready to help you wage peace in your backyard as well. And we're trying to build a real movement here. And we need you in it. Find us at www.departmentofpeace.world. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Because most believe the way things are is the way things have to be. But I have a feeling if you've made it this far, you're not like most. Which means we really need you. Click below to enlist in the Department of Peace today.